One for the Angels is the first episode of the Twilight Zone to feature the creator Rod Serling doing the opening narration.
There is a fifth dimension, beyond that which is known to man.
The episode opens on a shot of a toy of Robbie the robot and then pans up to the robot being picked up by the great Ed Wynn, who is going to play our main character Lou Bookman for this episode, who had a career that went all the way back to vaudeville. But if you grew up a little bit later on, you probably know him best as the Mad Hatter from the Disney Alice in Wonderland animated film.
Mustard? Mustard, yes, but mustard? Don't let's be silly.
Bookman is a salesman. He's the kind that sells trinkets and odds and ends off the side of the street, and the type of work he does involves him vocally trying to bring in customers with sales pitches. After a few moments of watching Mr. Bookman do his thing, we are introduced to our second main character in the story.
As of 3 o'clock this hot July afternoon, he'll be stalked by Mr. Death.
I love this fourth wall break. Sometimes I think fourth wall breaks are some of the scariest things in TV and movies, and this one really caught me off guard the first time I saw it. And just as another side note, I just like to say that I really love the fact that on this episode, Death is presented as almost sort of like a travel agent or a businessman, and he's wearing this nice fancy suit. Death in this episode of The Twilight Zone is played by the great Murray Hamilton, who had a very long and storied film career, but most of us who are a little bit younger know him as the mayor from Jaws.
Martin, my kids, well, that be true.
We next see a scene of Mr. Bookman hanging out with all the neighborhood children, and it is here that we get to see how he is such a friend of all the children. But there's one thing about this scene that really sits weird with me, is the fact that he sits down with the kids, and the little girl to his right, he gives a robot doll to, and the little boy to his left, he gives a robot to. But those other 5 kids behind him, he doesn't give them anything. They just get to eat shit. What's up with that, Lou? So next, Lou goes up into what I can only assume is like his little apartment building, being that he's like a salesman and he lives by himself. And Death is in there just taking notes, and he's asking him all these questions about his life. And I love this scene where Lou says, "What are you, some kind of census taker or something?"
Are you a census taker?
Born New York City, 1890.
And Death just totally ignores the question and just keeps on asking questions. It's pretty funny, and it's a pretty cool little character trait that Death has. I like that. Lou basically has to have it beaten into his head that he is going to die today, and that Death is taking him into the afterlife. And in the most dramatic, badass move ever, Death has to like turn around and flick his finger and kill Lou Bookman's poor flower who didn't do shit. I don't know what you had to do that for, you dick. So once Lou finally understands what the situation is, naturally, he doesn't want to die. And Death explains to him that there are 3 different types of ways that you can get an extension on your life. And Lou goes through the lists. He finds out 1, he doesn't have any family that are going to suffer unreasonably, horribly at his demise. 2, he's not a man on the precipice of some great discovery that's going to like improve the life of all mankind. But then when he gets to number 3, the third thing that could extend your life is that if you have some kind of unfinished business or something you've always wanted to do that is like a major event for you, And Lou immediately starts coming up with all these bullshit ideas that he could use.
I've never flown in a helicopter, that's it. I have never seen a Zulu war dance.
So naturally, Death is like, yeah, that shit ain't gonna work, homie. You need to come with me tonight, and we're gonna do this thing. And then Lou, out of nowhere, is like, okay, wait a minute. I got this one thing I want to deliver, and I know this sounds stupid. Maybe it sounded less stupid back then, but Lou says, I want to deliver a really big sales pitch, so big that the skies will open up, one for the angels. And I'm like, the hell are you talking about? And honestly, Death is kind of looking at him about the same way I probably would. And I'm going to go ahead and come right out and say it. Death is my favorite character in this episode. I just love his mannerisms and the way he acts and how professional he is. But when Lou really expresses how much it means to him, Death actually has like a moment where he gets like tenderhearted about it, and he actually caves in and says Lou can have the extension. So it goes to show you, like, in this episode, like, Lou is kind of a bullshit artist, even though he's technically a good guy to the kids and stuff, except for, you know, those 5 that he doesn't give robot toys to. But Death is actually a pretty nice guy, and he gives Lou the extension, which leads us to the point where Lou basically just comes right out and says, I am never going to make a sales pitch, so I will never die because I'm never going to fulfill the agreement that I give the big sales pitch and then I can die. So Death gets kind of pissed off about this, and Death decides he has to select a new victim. Upon saying that he has to select a new victim, he actually says, I have to make different arrangements. I love that tension that you have, like as soon as he says, I have to make different arrangements, and then you hear the tire screeching because you're like, wow, that was really fast and abrupt, and I really like that. It caught me off guard. And Lou runs outside, and he sees the little girl, and of course, like his best friend little girl, she's in the road, and she's dying, and now Lou realizes this is all his fault. Just to give Lou a bit of credit, he does realize that this is his fault, and he is done with his scam on Death, and he just says, why don't you just go ahead and take me now, let her live, I don't even have to give the sales pitch anymore. And he does try to do the right thing, but Death is not going to bend on this because he said he's already changed his plans. He's already made all the arrangements for this person to die now, and they're going to have to die at midnight. Well, Lou, just being a really stubborn old prick, he's just not having it. So he decides that he's going to wait on the steps in front of the girl's apartment, and he's just going to stop Death from going in there. And it's a little bit of a suspension of disbelief, I guess, because like Kent and Death just like appear in her room like he did with Lou's room earlier. But anyway, we're just not going to worry about that too much because it's a pretty heartwarming story and it's pretty light. So, you know, it's fine. I'll give it a pass on that. But yeah, Death comes up to the steps at 11:45 at night. Lou's sitting there with his, you know, bag of stuff that he sells. And he starts talking to Death about what's going on. And Death says, if I'm not there at exactly midnight, then the little girl won't die and it'll mess everything up. And the timeline gets jacked up and all that kind of thing. And so Lou has an idea that he's going to get his bag of stuff and he's going to set up on the street like it's the middle of the afternoon. And he's going to start doing his sales pitch to nobody. But we know he's actually doing his sales pitch for Death, and you can already kind of tell what's going on right here, right? So the story is really good because it leads us right to him selling just everything to Death. Like he starts to talk him up, and at first Death is like, I'm not going to be a good customer, and then before you know it, Death's hair is all screwed up. He's all disheveled and stressed out, and he's just like, everything Lou has to say about these products he's selling, like Death is like all over that shit. And you know, it's kind of silly. It's kind of silly, but it's sort of like a fairy tale, you know. And at the end, Lou offers this really weird thing, which is he basically offers himself as a manservant, and I don't really know what's up with that, but he does it, and it's apparently so distracting to Death that Death actually misses the fact that it is now hitting 12 o'clock midnight, and he wasn't there to take the little girl away, so she gets to live, and that's great. But then they both realize that Lou has given the big sales pitch that he was going to give, and that was his big pitch. He saved the girl's life, and I mean, you can't really get much better than that, right? You just saved a kid's life. And Death, again, Death is like such a really upstanding gentleman in this episode, because even though Lou has totally fucked him over and messed up everything he's tried to do since he showed up in this stupid town, he says that was a really good pitch. And so he even congratulates Lou on how good he did. So that's pretty great. And then Lou concedes that it is time to go, and he grabs his bag really quick, and he says,
You never know who might need something up there.
and then he looks to Death, and he's like, up there? And then Death turns and he goes, that's right, you made it. So it's a happy ending. So Lou, he dies, the little girl gets saved, and Lou gets to go to heaven, and it's a happy ending for everybody. And you know, it's not as creepy or as disturbing or unsettling as Where Is Everybody? But if there's one thing that I really love about the Twilight Zone, it's that there are episodes like this that are kind of like heartwarming, sort of fairy tale, fable episodes, and it kind of mixes it up so that the show does not have the same tone in every episode. And I definitely recommend this one. It's great.